Hello and welcome to our first episode of InStride TV.
This is an introduction to eClinicalWorks documentation and how to create an initial note. In future videos, I'll talk about templates and order sets and other things that you can do to make this quite a bit easier, quicker, and more accurate. But let's assume you don't have any templates, or you don't have a patient that's unique and doesn't fit into any of the templates you have, or I just want to know how I can write a note from start to finish without bothering with anything else. So that's what this video is going to do: general introduction and a run through for a patient progress note. So it's a terrible idea to do this without templates and order sets and things like that, because you will gain a lot of accuracy and speed using those other tools. But this will be a basics video, show you how you could write your encounter note. And you write your encounter note the way you want and the way you like it. This is just to give you an idea to get started. Front office and nurse workflows aren't part of this video. Each office has different ways of doing things. So we'll concentrate on completing the encounter note from the physician point of view, although we'll talk about a little bit about what the assistant might do as well. We'll go through all of the sections of an encounter note, how to complete and bill it, and we'll drop some pearls along the way. I've used a fake patient and created a follow-up. This is a plantar fasciitis follow-up patient, and we will enter the patient's encounter note by clicking their name from the office visit screen. Our new note opens and we see the patient note on the left, and it starts with the chief complaint section. The chief complaint section will frequently have in it anything that was entered by the front desk, which sometimes I leave in and sometimes I take out. The chief complaint section, which we'll see here, usually completed by the assistant by the time I got to the patient. They'll frequently enter the reason for the patient's visit, let's say plantar fasciitis, and then the assistant will also add, in my office, the past medical history, medications, allergies, and histories. They'll enter them, mark them as verified before I get to the patient. You can add chief complaints, remove chief complaints, fix spelling of chief complaints, and that all gets entered here by the assistant. We can do some templating with the chief complaint, and we'll talk about that at another video. Next comes where I typically start my documentation, and depending on how much documentation your staff does, you may or may not have this filled in. For my office, I usually fill in the history of the present illness. One of the things about documenting an eCW is that on this area of the screen here where the patient note ends up, we don't do a lot of documenting directly into that. There are a couple spots we will. Frequently, we use a window that pops up into which we enter all of our documentation. And when you close that window, the documentation you've entered gets transferred into the progress note and updates it for us. Note that if you enter stuff into there and don't close it, it will not get added to the note, and you'll be wondering where it went. So we're going to start by entering the HPI, the history of our present illness, and let's click the orange HPI text. That brings up this window, which I like to call kind of the documentation window, because this is where you enter all of your things. You'll see this window, you'll remember from your training, it has all these icons across the top, and these icons are the same as these orange sections down the left. They are the sections of your encounter note. I will frequently go from section to section by clicking one of these icons. Unfortunately, the icons aren't terrific as to tell you what's behind them, but you'll eventually learn what they are, and you can see by holding your mouse over them, they will give you a little pop-up tooltip that tells you what they are. You can use these at the top to move through your note. You can use these arrows at the bottom. I use a combination. So the HPI will either be entered by filling out one of these predefined categories. For example, this history one has patient is here for, and by clicking in the notes section, you can free type in here. You can use some of these pre-done phrases, and you can use these at the bottom to say how long and if it was sudden and how severe it is, and to enter all of your HPI information. And maybe one of these pre-done HPI sections will be good for you and you'll want to use them. And that's terrific. For my HPI, typically don't. And for this one, we're going to assume, well, I don't have any of these or know how to use them. I just want to type in my note or use my dragon and dictate it in. So let's talk about how to add free text. You'll see here at the bottom, there is a small window. And when you start typing in it, it expands to the whole window size. And this is where you can free text or dictate or whatever you like to do. When I enter my HPI, I don't do it this way. If we look back, let's close this window and look back at our encounter note, and you'll notice that there is this button next to many of the sections. And this is, by clicking this button, it opens up a window with a category at the top and a free text entry at the bottom. Follow-up of heel pain. Okay, we notice that we have our HPI, a history category, and then the free text text entered. So if you click HPI, what you'll see is we've used this history category and we've started entering text in our free text area. You can certainly come into this window, type down here. I just find it's quicker and faster to simply use this quick text enter button. If for some reason, when you click this button, you get something else up here, perhaps it was in stride fifth metatarsal fracture category that you wanted, or maybe it was something else, then you will have that as your category title. I typically use history, that makes the most sense to me, and I enter my HPI in this area. So I have my HPI entered in, and the next section that I would do would be the review of systems. So I will close the HPI section, entering my information into the note. Medical history, allergy, surgical history, hospitalizations, all these are entered by my assistant. If not, you enter yours here. And I typically enter my review of systems, and you may have somebody enter your own review of systems. You'll see that the review of systems has multiple categories. If you were big into a cardiovascular review of system, you can use this one. I have created one that is a general, simple review of systems. There are other in-stride ones you may like as well. For this patient coming back for plantar fasciitis, I may enter only a few things into my review of systems. For example, I may enter my constitutional, that they're feeling well and not having any other trouble. And I can do that by clicking in the notes field and typing here, clicking one of my pre-done options, or I can click this arrow, which puts in the default for that section. I would also put in that they are tolerating their medicine well, and I would also put in about that they're not having any other musculoskeletal problems. And my review of systems is now done. I'm going to go to exam by closing this window and go to examination. This is the examination field we use. It is also called regular examination. There are some other sections here that we won't be using. It is absolutely fine to skip them. If they are blank, they won't show up in the end of your note. So there are many exams already chosen for you. The first one here is an in-stride general exam, and it simply has an area where you could put detailed information about the area of concern if you'd like to document that way. And then there are typical systems here: constitutional, vascular, a couple different neuros, dermatologic, musculoskeletal, and there is an additional general if you wanted to use that. So for my patient, I will enter information into the exam. Here in my constitutional, I'm going to put in my default, which says that they're pleasant, cooperative, and not in acute distress. And then I want to go to my next section. Let's say that's my vascular exam. And I can use my standard vascular exam by clicking the default button, or I could enter text in a free text way here, or I could use some of these pre-done bits of note if I like those. So pulses are palpable, capillary refill is fine, and Hair growth is noted. Oh, that's a nice short vascular exam for this follow-up patient that's been here in the past. And we can maybe say, okay, in our dermatological section, we can say no open wounds, rashes, or drainage. And then most of our exam for this follow-up plantar fasciitis patient is going to go in here. So I'll enter my follow-up exam in here. So I have finished my musculoskeletal exam, and I am done writing my exam for the patient. So let's close this window, and we'll see that my exam is entered here. Examination. This is my in-stride general exam. I only filled out constitutional vascular derm and musculoskeletal, and that may be all I need for this patient. So I have entered my exam with free text. Next, we will see how to bring forward a previous exam. Many of the sections here have this down arrow, and if you click it and there were previous exams for this patient, they would be listed here. You would check that, close it, and you would bring your previous exam into your note. If you had multiple exams, maybe you had an inside general exam, and then maybe you made up another exam that was specific to the problem that you're doing. Well, both of those exams, if they were filled in the past, would be present, and you could choose those. Note, if you choose an exam, it brings the entire exam. You can't pick and choose the subsections of each exam. You may want to create a pathology-specific exam because I do this detailed information when I examine this particular pathology, and I'll have my in-stride general exam, but then I'll have another exam for this particular problem. Perhaps it's Charcot, or perhaps it's a bunion, and you do several things to evaluate your bunion, and you want a full bunion exam. You could certainly have one of those. Now that our exam is done, we need to enter our assessment. The assessments added in this assessment section. You could bring forward previous assessments using the down arrow button, but let's pick our assessments from the beginning, since for this patient, we don't have any. So you can enter your assessment using free text. You can also have a list of favorites. Favorites are accessed by clicking the yellow star, and sometimes you have to click it twice. That's a bug in this version. And you will get a list of your of your favorite diagnoses. eCW also doesn't give you scrolling lists in a lot of places. You need to hit the arrow keys to move to the next set of your favorites. Well, I have plantar fasciitis listed as one of my favorites. And let's enter it here, and it puts it down in our assessments. If I'd like to make sure that this plantar fasciitis stays on the patient's problem list, I will click the PL problem list button. Additionally, if I had previous problem list diagnoses, I could click this button and it would give me a list of my previous assessments that are on the problem list. So now that I have my diagnoses entered, let's say I want to add some information about those diagnoses. So I will go to treatment, which is our next section, and I will say, all right, these are my assessments I listed here, and I'm going to put in my information about my assessments. If you have multiple assessments, I frequently add my plan type verbiage to the NA/other section, but if I have only one diagnosis, I will put it in the diagnosis specific area. Each of these has a couple buttons. This one brings up your order sets if you wanted to order things. This one is for filling out forms, and this is where you add free text notes. I personally like using this one that says clinical notes. I also like to have a little header in bold that says discussion, because I think that looks nice. And then here is where I'm going to add all the things I talk to people about when I'm talking to them about their plantar fasciitis. I have entered my discussion about plantar fasciitis, which will get entered into the note here, and then enter the encounter note here. So I add that discussion because I think that looks nice under plan, and then here's all my verbiage about plantar fasciitis and how to treat it. Now, let's say we'd like to add x-rays or medicine. So we do that here, again, in the treatment section. And let's say we want to add an x-ray for this patient. We would choose diagnostic imaging. It's important that you associate your image with a diagnosis, and if you had many, they would all be listed here. For my plantar fasciitis, I'm going to add a right heel x-ray or left, whatever it was. I've also selected my favorite images, which you add by clicking the yellow star next to them. So I'm going to add a right heel x-ray. Lets me verify that I'm associating these diagnoses. I could also choose another if I had missed it. And now I have today's order of a x-ray. Let's say I'm also going to order a injection for this patient. Okay, so I am going to add a procedure, which is an injection. I'm going to add my injection procedure, which I have favorited, but I remember is 20550. Verify diagnosis with the procedure. I'm also going to add some steroid. And we'll add that. And let's say you were going to add also triamcinolone. I have ordered my x-ray and my injection and my medicine. And let's say I also wanted to give this patient some medicine. Well, I'm going to choose RX, and I have made multiple favorite medicines. Let's use one of those, Mobic. So I have plantar fasciitis listed. I'm going to pick my anti-inflammatory medicine, and okay. When you order a medicine, your drug interaction window will come up to let you know what medicines or medical problems may interfere with the medicines you have ordered. And then let's say I also wanted to send this patient to physical therapy. I would use the same way by clicking the referral button. So I have ordered my tests and my x-rays and my medicine. Now we have to document it. This is where it's different from where you may have used things before. See, in my treatment, I have started a medicine, I've ordered an image, I have ordered the injection and ordered the injection materials. And by ordering them, they end up in our procedure section already entered to be billed. But what I still need to do is enter the x-ray report and the injection verbiage. That's done under procedures. So by clicking procedures, brings up another one of our documentation entry windows with the number of categories along the side. Here is one for x-ray report. So I'm going to write my x-ray report for this patient. It says these are the sections I can fill out. And by clicking into the notes, I can pick which foot, right, heel. And then by clicking the next button, we move down those categories. Well, I have ordered a calcaneal axial and lateral. And the reason for it is heel pain. Evaluate for spur, cyst, or stress fracture, or whatever reasons you give for ordering your x-ray. And then in this area, we put our x-ray report. So my x-ray report is finished. And then I would add my impression. And for this one, I found a plantar calcaneal spur. And hit OK. And now I am done entering my x-ray report. Here under procedures, it says x-ray report, shows all those categories and the information I added. Oh, but I still need to document my procedure. So let me go back to this procedure section. I document my injection procedure in this category that I've made called in-office injections. Here is another one for an injection. Let's use that one. So I have my 20550 injection, and under notes, there are some things that are already entered, but I'm just going to enter my injection. I've entered my injection verbiage and click OK. Close the documentation window and my injection information, injection, single tendon sheath ligament apaurosis, my injection, and the information. That is how you enter your procedure information into the chart. Finally, now it's time to get paid. So we want to enter our billing information, and we do that here under billing information, and both of these sections take you to the same place. So let's enter our visit code. We see that our exam, our injection, and our medicines have already been added. So I'm going to add a modifier here that I injected the right heel. I x-rayed the right heel, and I also used 4 units of that. It has listed my diagnosis with those injections because that's how we ordered it. We need to add an E&M code for this established patient, perhaps. So I would come to my E&M service, established patient, pick my E&M code if I was going to use one. I may not for this simple injection visit, but maybe I was, and I would add it here. There is my office visit, and this is the diagnosis. If you had additional diagnoses, they would be added 2, 3 here. I also add a modifier 25 for this because my office visit talk was more than just my plantar fasciitis. I also put that atop just for me. You don't have to do that. It makes it easier for me to see. So we've added our billing codes, and assigned our diagnoses. Next, in the same window, we want the patient to come back in 3 weeks, and the reason is for right heel pain. That information, the follow-up time and the reason, gets shuttled to the front office so they can see it when they make their follow-up appointment, or they don't have to make a follow-up appointment because you added as needed or PRN. Now, let's close this and let's just take a look over here. We've added our visit code and our modifiers. Here is our procedure codes as well as their modifiers and units. Our entire note is finished, and what we want to do is 2 things. This one is somewhat optional, but that is pressing the Done button. By pressing the Done button, it lets the front office know that the patient's done because they get a check mark next to their name. And it also brings up what's called the Common Send window. So if I click Done, I am going to close that, and my Common Send window is going to come up where maybe I want to now send my medicine. Or if I had labs that I was going to send, I could send them here. I'm not going to for this fake patient, but by pressing Send, I would send this one that's checked for her medicine or his medicine. We'll close that, pretend we sent it. Then the last thing to do is to click the lock button. That's this button here. You get a confirmation as to whether or not you want to lock it. And by locking it, it prevents future editing, formats it nicely, and allows it to be printed, faxed, or be closed and done. I hope this has been a helpful overview of documentation in eCW. In future videos, we'll make documenting much quicker and easier by using templates, order sets, and things. If you have any questions or I can help you, email me and I'll make another video, or we'll cover it in our InStride Live webinars that are starting every other Tuesday evening. I hope this has been helpful. Thanks for your time.